Prop 22 several years ago was established that marriage in California would be between a man and a woman. As we know, the California Supreme Court recently overruled that, declaring it to be unconstitutional as a violation of people's civil rights. Proposition 8 is a proposition that would put the definition of marriage as between a man and a woman into the California Constitution. The reasons that we are in favor of that are to protect our families and our children. We do not, by any stretch, hope or desire that this result in any persecution of gay couples, of gay lifestyle, and that any hostility towards them is not our objective, and we certainly hope none of that happens. But it is not a private issue. It is a public issue now. It's been an agenda that has been set forth that is against our moral principles. And from a moral perspective, we believe that marriage between a man and a woman is the only legitimate way in which children can come into the world and be reared in a circumstance which is most beneficial for them. And in a way, anything that would erode that would harm society and not help it. And there's a mountain of sociological evidence that shows that if you allow that to erode over time, that will have a very detrimental effect on society. And for the protection of our families and our children, we're in support of Proposition 8.
Okay. Derek, would you like to follow up with that?
Maybe just a couple of comments. We find that polls are consistently showing that the majority of Americans reject same-sex marriage. A May 2008 Gallup poll found 56% opposed to 40% agree. A CNN research poll in October 2007 found about the same margin. Roughly, exactly 44 states have instituted laws to basically protect traditional marriage as between a man and a woman. Only California and Massachusetts currently allow legal marriage between same-gender couples. And in both cases, it was a narrow decision by the respective state Supreme Courts which permitted the legalization of same-sex marriage. It was 4-3 in California, 4-3 in Massachusetts. The vast majority of Americans would prefer to see traditional marriage.
Okay. In light of the fact that there seems to be a majority of Americans opposed to gay marriages and for the moral principles that they've talked about, as well as supporting traditional marriage and that would affect children, could you please explain why each of you are opposed to the proposition?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start. First of all, today's forum is about Proposition 8. It's not about same-sex marriage. They're two very different things. Regardless of how you feel about the issue of same-sex marriage, you have to look at Proposition 8 in its full context, what it means for the state of California. The legislative analyst has come out and said it's going to cost California tens of millions of dollars in the near term. Right now, this state is in dire financial straits, even by California standards. Our governor is going hat in hand to Wall Street trying to find $7 billion, and who knows if he'll find it. We have to look at what Proposition 8 means, and regardless of what you think about the issue of same-sex marriage, you can and you should oppose Proposition 8 because it sets a dangerous precedent in the state. It says that with tens of millions of dollars of special interest money, we can literally buy a new California Constitution that reflects the narrow social agenda of what is arguably a minority in this state. And that's not the California my wife and I want our kids to grow up in.
Okay, Aaron?
I'm with a grassroots organization called Honor Cherish, and our mission is to defeat Proposition 8, the proposed ban on same-sex marriage. And the reason why, and by the way, I'll just comment that I'm not here for self-interest. I am straight and I am married. And the reason why I oppose Proposition 8 is that I believe in equality, and I believe in civil rights and civil liberties, and I don't believe in taking away anybody's rights and treating anybody as a second-class citizen. And some of the things that the gentleman to my left said, I'd like to respond to. One of the things that was said is that polls show that people are against this, and so therefore we shouldn't allow same-sex marriages. I think that's a very dangerous way to think of things. We used to have bans on interfaith marriages. In the year 388, Theodosius I made it a crime for a Christian to marry a Jew, and the punishment was death. And we've gotten beyond that in our society. We used to have bans in 30 of our states in this country on interracial marriages, and we've gotten past that as well. People used to get arrested for getting married. I think two consenting adults should be at liberty to get married if they want. Period. End of story. And, you know, I don't care if tomorrow's polls show that an overwhelming percentage of Californians or Americans are against interracial marriages. I don't think that's a justification or an excuse then to put on a ballot, let's say, a ban on interracial marriages. I don't think that's how we should do things in our society. And, you know, I view this, the gentleman over here, Wayne, talked about moral judgment. And, you know, I believe that everybody should be allowed to have their own moral judgment. People came to this country to escape religious persecution and to be able to live their lives as they want to. And I believe in that, and that's why I'm opposed to Proposition 8.
Let me follow up with another thing that Wayne raised, was the perception that it would affect adversely future generations and raising of children, that somehow gay marriages would result in a deterioration of the effect on children. Could you perhaps address that?
Yeah, I think I have children. I know Aaron has children. I think you all
Actually,
have
I don't have children.
You don't have children, excuse me.
Just in case
But
my wife's watching.
Anyway,
I'm glad you clarified that.
I don't think anyone here today would argue that protecting children should be the primary focus of what we do as a society. But what we're talking about here with Proposition 8 is setting a dangerous legislative precedent with the Constitution of the state of California. I mean, $25 million in special interest money, a lot of that's coming from outside of California, to rewrite the Constitution when we've got a situation here where 71%, I believe is the statistic, of children in California live in what they call non-traditional homes. And that can be anything from a single mom or dad through foster care, adoption, or even a same-sex couple. Who's to say? Who's to be the final arbiter and the final judge as to who's qualified to provide a sound social structure and an upbringing for children? Right now we've got a problem. We need to protect kids, and any two committed, responsible adults who can provide that structure and that nurturing environment for kids should be allowed to do so.
I'd also like to add to that that there was a court case in Sacramento which said that the proponents of Proposition 8 had false and misleading information that the court struck out of the ballot initiative because they said this is going to force schools to teach kids about gay marriage. And the court said that is false and misleading, and they took that out. Under Education Code Section 51240, parents have the right to have their children excluded from any conversations that relate to sexuality that disagrees with their morals. And in fact, the Education Code that's cited by the proponents of Proposition 8 explicitly says that it encourages kids to talk to their parents, and all it says is that any sexual education that occurs, which is not mandatory, by the way, but any sexual education that occurs, that you should respect marriage and loving relationships so that people don't view it as, gee, now we learned about sexual education, let's just go around and sleep around with everybody. I don't remember when I was in school, and maybe I'm going too far back and maybe my memory's just not good enough, but I'm pretty confident I wasn't taught marriages between a man and a woman or anything about marriage in the sex education classes. And so I think that that is just an outright lie and is misleading. And the court has even said so. The case is Jenkins versus Bowen, case number 342008000173666. You can look it up for yourself.
Okay. How would you respond to these claims that it would not affect education of children and it would not adversely affect children?
Hogwash. To use a word.
That's a good one.
Education Code Section 51890A1D requires comprehensive health education programs in all schools in California, K through 12. Those programs have to include a number of required topics. That section includes the following language, quote, health and family health and child development, including the legal and financial aspects and responsibilities of marriage and parenthood. That is a required element of the curriculum in California schools K through 12. And if you think that just because there is a sign-off by parents, you can go look at the Massachusetts cases where they have they've had the same issue that came up. There was the same parental consent requirement for families in Massachusetts. 2 families objected. They were taken out of school meetings in handcuffs, thrown in jail, and said, sorry, you have no right to object.